Hello and welcome to Breaking Bread with Rivaj Maharaj, where nothing is off the table. For today's episode, I wanted to talk on the recent surfacing of emails between convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, the late Jeffrey Epstein, and the United States Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. So without further ado, let's get into it. Unless you've been living under a rock, I think pretty much everybody is aware of who Jeffrey Epstein was and what he did. And I think that even if you were living under a rock, you still would have found out about him. However, I'll just give you a little introduction as to who he was and how this pertains to Howard Lutnick and the United States administration. Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile that supplied young women and girls and kids to the elite in society, the political class, the business class, the academia. If you were in that top echelon of society and pedophilia was something that was right up your alley, then Jeffrey Epstein was basically your man. Now, I must stress that all people mentioned in these emails and these files that have been released are not convicted of pedophilia or having engaged in any wrongful sexual conduct towards minors or anything wrong. Some of them were purely business contacts. Some of them were people reaching out by way, in terms of trying to get some lobbying done. So he was a bridge between, those in power and those that wanted something from those in power. And along with that, he indulged in fulfilling most of these people's fetishes. However, all these scandalous events that took place were being recorded. You can only assume that it was being recorded as collateral for to be held above these people's heads in order to get them to dance to whatever tune they needed to. So that's who Jeffrey Epstein was. He mysteriously died in prison in the United States. Some say he's still alive. What is important here is that Howard Lutnick, who is Donald Trump's effectively Minister of Finance, did an interview on a podcast called Podforce One or something to that nature, where they kicked off the interview with him talking about how he lived next to Jeffrey Epstein. They had bought the property right next door to Jeffrey Epstein, and he and his Howard Lutnick and his wife had gone to introduce themselves to Epstein. And he said that when the door opened and Epstein had ushered them in, the first thing that caught his eye was that there was this massage table in the middle of the dining room or the lounge or wherever it was, which seemed highly inappropriate. And Lutnick then says that he asked Epstein, you have a massage table, right here. How often do you have massages? And Jeffrey Epstein said to him, every day. And then apparently, this is now all according to Howard Lutnick, Jeffrey Epstein leaned closer to him, to Lutnick, and said something along the lines of, the type of massage it was, with a very, from Lutnick's side, a very sick innuendo being conveyed. And he said with that, he looked at his wife and they both said that they had to excuse themselves. And as they left the property, they decided amongst themselves that they did not want to be anywhere near the man.
Jeffrey Epstein was your neighbour. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about him. East 71st Street. He was your neighbour for 10 years. How well did you know him?
All right. So we are in number 11 and he lives in number 9.
Right.
So we renovate, we buy our house, and our house is pigeons and mice.
Right.
Okay, that's it. It was derelict.
Right.
So we rebuild our house. We move in 2005. Okay. Jeffrey Epstein is arrested in like 2008, I think, or something like that.
Right.
So knock on the door. His assistant on like a Saturday says, Mr. Epstein, your neighbor would like to invite you over for coffee. So my wife and I go next door. We walk the 7 steps,
Yes.
right, to the next house for coffee. We share a wall.
Right.
Right. So it's in New York City. So he invites us in. We have coffee in this, and he says, do you want a tour? We said, great. He's
Interesting.
got a really big house.
Every room you went into?
He's got, well, I'll tell you. So his house is like super big, really wide. And so he gives me a tour in the living room, big living room. And then across from it is double doors. I assume it's the dining room.
Yeah.
And he opens the doors, and there's a massage table in the middle of the room.
Ooh.
And candles all around and stuff. So I ask very insightful, cutting questions. I say to him, massage table in the middle of your house? How often do you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he gets weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage.
Ooh.
Now my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry, we have to go. And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
Really?
So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Oh.
And so I look back at it as a gift.
Yes.
Now, during the course of that interview, Lutnick goes on further to say that Epstein, because the journalist conducting the interview asks him, you had the moral fortitude to walk away from Epstein's place, having noticed all these red herrings and these, alarm bells went off in your head. So you were intelligent enough to know that something was not right here, and you walked away. How is it that people like Bill Gates and others, these other prominent people in society, went in and they didn't see the same thing? They endeared themselves to him. And his answer was that basically they were, Epstein had been blackmailing them and that they were compromised.
Right. So, I mean, that's an incredible story that you could pick up that he was a pervert.
It's gross. The guy's gross. Right with my wife. He's gross. The guy's gross. This was not, the deep nuance of Howard Lutnick. This guy's gross.
Right. So how come Bill Gates and all these other people could hang around him and not see what you saw? Or did they see it and ignore it? Or
no, they participated.
Right.
That's what his MO was, get a massage, get a massage. And what happened in that massage room, I assume was on video. This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever. Blackmailed people. That's how he had money.
Now, be that as it may, fact or fiction, whether it makes, whether it's a lie, whether Lutnick, it doesn't matter. The impression Lutnick is creating in this interview is that he is somebody of high moral stature. He is somebody that has a set of principles that he abides by, and they are not to be compromised. And if I remember correctly, when that interview was released, I think Valuetainment, Patrick Bet-David had done a little snippet on it, and one of the gentlemen on his panel had said, you can see that Lutnick is 100% correct, and or that Lutnick is he was genuine, and he was forthright, and he stood his ground basically.
So here's Howard Lutnick telling a story about what happened with him with Epstein once. It's a very very. So they're at the house.
Yes. This is because mind you, Pat, this is a 4 minutes, 43
We're not
second
gonna watch
clip.
the whole thing,
Yeah,
but-
so right now, so he's sitting down with New York
Set
Post.
up. He happens to live next door. Epstein moves in. Now they're
Epstein-
neighbors.
Yeah, now they're moving because Lutnick's been there since 2005. They have to renovate, so now he doesn't really know who Epstein is yet. Trust me, guys, I did the research. He didn't know him. So, and by the way, he's sitting down with the New York Post, Miranda Devine. So Epstein, I'll fill you up to this point. Epstein's assistant comes, knocks on Howard Lutnick's door, and goes, "Hey, Mr. Epstein is your new neighbor. He wants to bring you over for coffee." He's giving them a tour at him. And even Howard Lutnick is like, "Bro, the house is ridiculous. It's huge." And this is when he shows a part of the house and it gets a little weird. Go ahead, Rob.
Look, I like his answer, but it is contradictory
To the White House.
to
To the
White
official
House.
narrative.
Yeah, so it is contradictory to the narrative, but you got to give him props for telling his experience with
love it.
Epstein and how horrible it was. And Tom, what do you think about the story here with Howard Lutnick?
So I have a couple views on it. And the first is, why would Howard, right now, with all that's going on and with all the success Howard has had, let's face it, he has the distinction of running one of the most successful presidential transitions ever. In that he and Susie Wiles picked people, helped interview him. He's had this great success. Why would you go get in the mud pit of the Epstein stuff? You could stay way out over here talking about other things. There's speculation that he was interested in Bessent's position if Bessent went to Fed. But then they said, no, Bessent's not going to go to Fed. He's going to stay right where he is. And so why, with all of that and all the gloss that you've got, why would you do the interview like this unless one thing, it's true? That's what I think. Why would you even get in the mud?
You just said these two things. So are you saying this is his way of getting back for not getting Bessent's job?
Oh, no. I mean, he was getting, if Bessent goes to Fed, Lutnick was a leading candidate to step into Bessent's.
So why talk about this stuff now?
So, yeah, see, I think either it's true or.
Why would he lie? I believe it's true.
I
That's
believe
right.
him.
The
That's
guy's
what I'm
next
saying.
door to him, so why would he lie about something like this?
That's exactly
And remember
right.
what he said. What's the part about this that you can't lie about? He says, I'm standing there, and my wife is standing right here.
And he
then
gets
I said,
close.
Jeffrey, we have to go. And then they leave, right? And we take the 6 steps to my house, or
Yep.
whatever words he
Yep.
used. So I don't know why he would lie about something like this.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's no reason for him to lie. There's no reason to get in the mosh pit.
And why?
However, the release of these last lot of Epstein files paints a totally different picture. Because you will see, I've got the email, I'll put it up on the screen as well, that Lutnick emails Jeffrey Epstein to say that he's on his boat and that he's there with his wife and another couple, and there's about 6 or 8 kids or whatever. I don't remember the specifics of it, because to me, honestly, that is immaterial. The point is that Lutnick was in contact with Epstein. And, you know, he didn't mention the names of these kids. He just said their ages and I think the sexes of these kids and something about them having dinner or lunch or something like that. The details of it, for me, are immaterial. Because for me, the matter stops the moment you find that there is an email between Lutnick and Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Lutnick could have messaged Jeffrey Epstein to say, what is the weather like there? Is it raining? Or he could have said, we've just put a man on the moon. It's immaterial. The point I'm trying to make here is that he emailed Jeffrey Epstein. And this was after he claimed to have met Epstein and was being hugely repulsed by the man. He found Jeffrey Epstein so repulsive that both he and his wife decided that they would never want to have anything to do with Epstein. So how is it that later on these emails surface that he subsequently arranges a meeting with Epstein, with his wife and his family there? You know, if this is somebody who you find having a morally reprehensible character, somebody who you know at that point has already been charged with pedophilia and trafficking of young kids, you you must be really stupid to have then taken your wife and kids there to meet the guy. So this picture that he painted in the original podcast of him being this person of high moral stature and, having all these principles that he abides by is a load of hogwash, because it's been proven that he subsequently, at the least, he emailed Jeffrey Epstein. Now, he was called before Congress. He was testifying in front of one of the senators. And even that looked like a bit of a joke, because it was basically there to just get this over and done with and get it out of the way, and let's sweep it under the carpet after that.
Secretary Lutnick, as I said in my opening statement, you led people to believe that you had cut off all contact with Jeffrey Epstein after the 2005 encounter you and your wife had in his apartment. But as I'm sure you know, the Epstein files show a very different record of interaction. Why do the Epstein files show you coordinating a meeting and planning a visit with Jeffrey Epstein on his private island in December 2012?
Thank you for the question. I'm glad to be here to make it clear that I met Jeffrey Epstein when I moved to a house next door to him in New York, right? And I met him then. Over the next 14 years, I met him 2 other times that I can recall. 2 times. And that is none for 6 years. So 6 years later, I met him. And then a year and a half after that, I met him, and never again. Probably the total, and you've seen all of these documents, of these millions and millions of documents, there may be 10 emails connecting me with him, probably about 10 emails connecting me with him over a 14-year period. I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person. Okay?
Did you in fact make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's not an indication that you yourself engaged in any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein. It's the fact that you believe that you misled the country and the Congress based on your earlier statements.
I looked through the millions of documents for my name, just like everybody else. Yeah. And what I found was there was a document that says that I had a meeting with him in May, I think, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Not dinner or otherwise, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
All right. There's also a reference to the fact that Epstein had expressed an interest in meeting your nanny. Do you know whether Jeffrey Epstein ever met with your nanny?
No, I saw that. I had no idea what that was about.
Because again, Lutnick says he's had at least 10 emails with Jeffrey Epstein. 10 emails? As if from 3 million, these 10 are absolutely frivolous. The point is, you painted yourself as this righteous man, only to find that you've gone and lied. Not only that, you've interacted with the gentleman that you find so repulsive up to 10 times via email. That's what we know. What about what we don't know? So your moral, your character comes into question when you paint yourself as this, Christ-like figure, for want of a better word, because you had the moral judgment to find that Epstein is repulsive and there's something wrong with him, and yet people like Bill Gates and them didn't. Only to find that you've now been communicating with the man via email. Me personally, if I was Donald Trump, I would fire you immediately. You have lost all credibility. If you can lie about something like that, you want to go out onto the world and talk about finance? You know, accountants are meant to be people that are straight. They're not meant to be they're not meant to have questionable character. Because if you can lie about something like that and you're dealing with finance, what are you prepared to do? And if you say that Epstein, these people all hung around Epstein because they were compromised, why were you hanging around Epstein? Were you compromised as well? Now, you in this position of authority, if by your words they were compromised, one would lead to think that you were compromised as well. So one of two things needs to happen. Lutnick either needs to voluntarily step down or Donald Trump needs to fire him. And the fallout from this will determine the types of characters you're dealing with in the United States administration as of present. Because don't forget, Lutnick is the guy that was in favor of putting tariffs on everybody and doing all these things. And, you know, I can only surmise that when he gave that original interview, he was under the impression that, or he may have been given some guarantee that it would not come back and bite him because these files would not be made public. So one of a few things has happened. He's either fallen out of favor. If he has fallen out of favor with the Trump administration, that means this is his exit. Alternatively, pressure has mounted. They've had to release the files. Or the third option is that while all this is carrying on, what else is going on that we are not privy to, that is being snuck by? So once again, when you have people like this leading the world, you sit back and understand why the world is the shitty mess it is in today. Because these sickos, they run the world. I think it's time we got rid of these people and put in people with some credibility and some dignity and integrity. I don't know how we're going to find that, because, you know, you look all over the world. Just look, you're finding politicians with any source of integrity is a stretch. I can name a few good ones, but it's a stretch. It seems like the world is infested by these sick, demonic personalities. I want to thank you for spending time with us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Please remember to like, share and subscribe, as it helps us with the algorithm and it helps our channel to grow.